everyone, hope you're all well. Welcome to episode 2 of how to set up an African Cichlid tank. And today I'm going to be talking to you regarding tank selection, filtration, water parameters, aquascaping. So now you've probably done all your research and you've found out what type of African cichlid you want to keep. So you found out, do you want to breed them, do you want them in a community tank, or would you like an all-male setup? Today I'm going to give you an example of setting up a Mbuna tank. Mbuna is probably the most popular of the African cichlids to keep. And behind me, for an example, I'll use my tank. Okay, it's a dual Rio 240, around about 220 litres after water displacement with all the rocks and the background. Okay, so you figured out that you want to keep Mbuna. And you want to breed them, so you've gone for 2 males, 3 to 4, probably 5 of the females. This size tank will probably hold around about 30 adult size Mbuna with good filtration. Okay, this tank is around about 35 in there at the moment, but I've also got dwarf Mbuna being Demosonia. They don't get too big. Okay, so also on this tank you want to think about your filtration. So getting all the basics ready first, and then we'll talk about cycling your tank. So in this tank I have what's called a Sun 1400 litre filter. It's an external filter. And the other filter I have is a Fluval 305. So you've got to think about your water capacity, and then think about what type of filtration you'll need, because an African cichlid tank, you need to be over-filtrated. Because obviously African cichlids, or certain species of African cichlids, especially Mbuna, do a lot better in a more, say, busy tank. If you only have just a handful of Mbuna, the aggression level is going to be too high. So 220 litres, I want to be turning it over around about 6 times an hour, which I'm doing. So you take that into consideration as well. Okay, the aquascaping. Mbuna are rock dwellers, and they need territories. They also need places to hide to get away from the dominant fish. They also need territories for breeding. So what you need to do, you can use most rocks, as long as they're not porous, they're not going to leach anything into, obviously, the tank. There's a quick way of doing that. You can do vinegar on most rocks, and if it starts bubbling and stuff like that, you don't want to use that type of rock. Also watch out for rocks with iron deposits in it as well, because that will leach into your tank's water. You can use things like river rock, cobbles, ocean rock's quite popular. There's quite a lot that you can use. Slate, big chunks of slate. Personally in here, I'm not 100% sure, I will admit that, what type of rock it is, but it's not porous. And luckily enough, it kind of matched the background. So what you want to do when you're setting up your rocks, you've got to think about territories, places to hide. You just don't want a few rocks jotted about, okay? Because Mbuna, like I said before, are rock dwellers, and they will hang around the rocks more than anything. So try and create a natural looking environment for them. So what I've done here, obviously with a 3D background, I've got to take that into consideration as well, because the Mbuna will go higher up the tank now, thinking that there's rocks at the back of the tank. So I've placed them in areas where there's holes, there's little gaps for them to get through, to hide. Areas where it's a bit of open sand as well, so they can, obviously, the males can prepare their breeding area for their females. Substrate is quite important as well, because obviously you've got to try and keep the pH levels quite high in an African cichlid tank. So let's talk about the substrate for a minute. In here I'm just using what's called play sand, the rinsed play sand, and then obviously when you buy it you get it back. Rinse it over and over and over again until all the crap's out of it, basically, because you don't want it all flowing about in the tank once you start filling it with water. You can also use fine coral sand. I don't suggest you use a gravel, okay? If you're going to use a gravel, use a really fine grade gravel, because Mbuna, as well as most every single African cichlid, they like to sift through the sand, and they also like to move the sand, dig it round. You don't want it too deep. You want probably just around about an inch and a half, probably max, okay? If you're going to have your sand too deep, gases are going to build up inside the layer of sand, and eventually that will start getting into your tank as well and causing problems for your fish. So keep it quite thin. Also as well, I always, this is me personally, before I put the sand in, I place the rocks that are going to be the holding rocks, so to speak, the ones that you're going to stack either rocks on or around. Put that straight onto the glass, okay? Put the big rocks on the glass, it will hold it. I mean, don't listen to all these stories, oh, it will smash my glass. Trust me, I've seen someone stand in a tank that was weighing probably around about, I don't know, 75 kilos, and he stood in the tank and didn't even smash. Okay, so then put the sand around it. This way, when the Mbuna or any of the African cichlids start to dig the tank, dig the substrate, there's less chance of the rocks actually toppling over, so it's a lot safer that way as well. So in here as well, you can see that I have a 3D background. I bought that from a company called aqua-maniac.com. Check them out, they're really good. I've got review videos as well, so go to my channel, look at the playlist and look at their backgrounds in the review section. Heaters wise, I've got a 200 watt down this end and another 200 watt that's hid behind the background. For water movement, I've got a power head. You can also use wave makers like you do in marine tanks. What you want to do, you want to create water movement and surface movement, because if the water's stagnant and there's no flow in the water, you'll find your Mbuna or any African cichlid gasping. They'll be coming up to the top, basically looking for air, obviously more air at the top of the tank than at the bottom. So you want anything that can create type of a wave effect on top of the water and also have a good circulation. What I normally do is point one external filter along the back of the tank and then another filter up to the front of the glass and around, so it's in a clockwise motion. This way as well, you're pushing all the waste around the tank and it's not staying in one spot. Also that can cause problems with the water along on the line as well. Lighting, I've got a marine white at the front and a tropical one, just sort of like a day glow one at the back, because I didn't want the back being too bright. Obviously it'll just basically wash out the colours of the background. But that lighting's, personal taste as well. Down the line, probably in a couple of weeks' time, maybe 3 weeks, I'll try and cover more on setting up an LED system regarding your lighting as well. So yeah, so you got, remember your filter, you want to turn your tanks over probably 5 or 6 times. You want good water movement. Make sure from Mbuna that your rocks are adequate for the type of species that you're keeping. So if it's a rock dweller, have plenty of places for them to hide, build the rocks up. Try and mix the rocks up, don't sort of have one big pile of rocks. What happens is then the dominant Mbuna or dominant African cichlid will think that big pile of rocks is his territory. So break the little piles up, so one male from one species can look after that side, one in the middle. You're just creating sort of a natural environment for them at the end of the day. You can use plants, onion plants and stuff like that, but it's totally up to you. It's personal taste, because at the end of the day they're probably going to get eaten. So we've got the filters, the aquascaping, we covered the substrate, we covered the water movement, the pH level, like I said before, you want it around about 7.6 to in between 8.5. If your water's around about 7-8, that will be okay, around about 8. A lot of people do use salt and stuff. I've mentioned that in a previous video, but it's, like I said, it's totally up to you. If you want pristine water condition, then by all means, at the end of the day, it's your tank. Okay, so we covered Mbuna. Okay, the haps from Lake Malawi, okay, they grow big, so you've got to take into consideration what size tank you're gonna need. Just like going back to Mbuna will get up to about 6-7 inches, depending on the species, so take that into account when you're selecting your tank. What I should have covered before, I will talk about that in a bit as well, before even adding your fish. So, regarding haps, for example, Venustus, okay, can grow up to around about 13 inches, so you don't want them in a 3-foot tank. You want something around about 5 foot upwards. Remember, it's footprint that counts more than anything, okay? So, you could say I've got a 5 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot, it doesn't matter. You need bigger than that, okay? So, wider, taller, longer, the better. Okay, haps and peacocks, what they'll need, they're not really rock dwellers, okay? So they'll have a rock maybe where they breed against and stuff, but they're more sort of open water swimmers. You can find them in not so deep water and in the lake. So what I suggest that is you build up some piles and have some open area for them to swim. And the same again, you don't want a big rock display, you just want basically just place some rocks in, try and make it look as natural as possible. So yeah, and what they'll do then, they'll, if you've got more males in the tanks, they'll pick their own rocks and they'll breed around it. Just like Mbuna will do, they'll pick up little territories, they'll be obviously protective of their area. Okay, so then, I think that's everything from Lake Malawi. Let's talk about Tanganikans. Okay, so you've got your multis, they are shell dwellers. So you really don't need a massive tank. You're okay with probably around about a 2-foot tank. You could put shellies or multis, whatever you want to call them. Get some of your big shells from your local fish shop or off the beach. Make sure you rinse them out thoroughly, boiling hot water, clean them right out, get all the crap out of them. So you can have some rocks here and there, and then obviously you want to group up the shells, facing the shells, opening towards the surface, different angles and stuff, and just watch them. They will stay along the bottom. Lake Tanganikans, most of the Tanganikans are found in a lot deeper water. Then you've got your fronts. They're almost the same, like perhaps some peacocks. They're open swimming as well, so you don't really need loads of rocks. Then you've got your trops as well. They do like rocks. You know what I mean? They will spawn and breed in a nice rock display. Okay, so Lake Victorians. They do grow quite big as well, so take into consideration the size they're going to grow. Make sure you get an adequate sized tank for them as well. So you can do the exact same thing, same as the Mbuna really, build up loads of rocks, give them areas to hide, territories, because Lake Victorians, the Vics, the males are well known for being quite aggressive. Okay, so I wouldn't really recommend keeping them with Mbuna. I've done it in the past when I was beginning, and I found out the hard way they are quite aggressive. So if you like Lake Victorians, try and keep compatible species together, or even try a species tank. The colours you can get from Lake Victorian cichlids are absolutely, they're amazing. So check them out as well. So now you've decided your tank and what type of aquascaping you want to do, your filtration, your heating, what you're going to use for water movements. You've got to decide how you're going to cycle the tank. Personally, I like to use a product called Safe Start. You just add it to your tank. Personally, I wait a couple of days. You might want to put a few fish in there maybe to help the circulation as well. What I also do as well, if you've got a tank already set up, use the media from your existing filters, swap them over, just switch them, and it also helps the process of cycling your tank as well. But if you don't have another tank set up, ask a friend. 9 times out of 10, you've got someone that's running a well-established tank, so use their media as well. So I think really that's it. Food-wise, obviously research what type of dietary requirements. We covered that in episode 1. So there's a lot to think about, but if you take your steps slowly from the beginning, plan properly, get it all planned out before you just jump in, stick in a 10-inch Venestus in a 3-foot tank. You've got to do it right. I mean, at the end of the day, we all love the hobby. Try and keep it as pure as possible, and try and give the fish the best habitat they deserve, and look after them as best as you can as well. So thank you for watching episode 2. I hope I helped some people out. Like always, if you've got any questions or comments, leave it in the comments section below or email me. And yeah, look forward to episode 3, which will be out next Monday. Cheers.